Okay, so we're going to use the given 0 to find all the zeros of the function. Well, it's a cubic. We have 3 zeros. We're given 1. I'd try and do synthetic division, however, you can't do synthetic division on an imaginary solution. So in that case, synthetic division's out. Here's our approach. Notice that you have 4i as a solution, which means negative 4i is the other imaginary solution. So right now we have 2 of the 3 solutions. So the third solution must be real, because remember, imaginary solutions occur in pairs, and if we had another imaginary solution, we'd have to have 2 imaginary solutions. So it has to be real. So what's our approach if we can't use synthetic division? Well, we're going to write out the steps. First, we're going to write the factors for these 2 zeros. So we know x minus 4i and x plus 4i are 2 factors. Second step, find the product. Alright, we don't have to FOIL, we can just F and L. The first term multiplied give x squared. The last 2 terms multiplied give minus 16i squared. We know I squared goes to negative 1. We're going to make the adjustment on the minus 16. So a quadratic factor of this cubic is x squared plus 16. Okay, well that's great. Well, it's the next step. Alright, there's many steps, so we're going to write out the steps to kind of help us think through the math. We're going to divide this quadratic factor into f of x. Divide into f of x. And the way that we have to do that is long division. Grown. We can't use synthetic division because remember, synthetic division only works for linear factors, and this is not linear, it's quadratic, so we have to do the long division. Alright, look at your cubic. If there's any missing terms, you're going to fill them in with placeholders of 0. Alright, long division. What do I multiply x squared by to get 3x cubed? Well, I'm going to have to multiply it by a 3 at least, and an x. Go back and multiply all terms of the dividend by 3x, lining up appropriately. So 3x times x squared gives 3x cubed. 3x times 16 is 48x. Alright, remember in long division, you come back and you subtract, which means you have to subtract all terms, which means change the sign of all the terms. Conveniently, those will cancel. Bring down negative 2x squared. Conveniently, those will factor, or cancel. Bring down minus 32. Start the whole process over again. What do you multiply x squared by to get negative 2x squared? We're going to multiply by negative 2. Going back and distributing, we're going to get negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times 16 is minus 32. Notice when you come in and you take the opposite of all the signs, then you add down, we're going to get a remainder of 0, which means 3x minus 2, the quotient, is another factor of the cubic. So if 3x minus 2 is a factor, set it equal to 0. Add 2, divide by 3, so another 0 would be x equals 2/3. So let's just come down here and list all our zeros. There has to be 3 of them because it's a cubic. We found one real 0. And based on the given imaginary 0 of 4i, we knew that there was a conjugate pair of negative 4i. Alright, so we have all the steps right here. We won't write down the steps again, but I knew that there was going to be several steps, and so in the beginning I thought, you know what, at least with one problem, let's write it all out. So we'll have something to look back at and remind ourselves of what we did. Okay? Alright, 2. Problem 2 is also a cubic, so there has to be 3 zeros. We have one imaginary 0. So its conjugate, positive 5 minus 2i, is the other imaginary 0. There must be one 0 left. It has to be real, because imaginary zeros occur in pairs, and we can't have another pair or 2 more, because that would be too many solutions for a cubic. Alright, first step. First write the factors for the given zeros. So 5 plus 2i would have come from x minus 5 minus 2i. And 5 minus 2 would be placed in the factor x minus 5 plus 2i. Second step, find the product. Alright, this looks a little bit intense, but we're going to do something that's kind of smart here. I'm going to rewrite the problem, and I'm going to use some brackets instead of some parentheses. Well, actually, I'm going to use parentheses also. What we're going to observe is that x minus 5 can be placed in a parenthesis with the minus 2i behind. Likewise, x minus 5 is going to be placed in a parenthesis with the positive 2i from behind. Okay, so why I want to do this is because when I go to multiply these, think of that as your x and that is your x. And then we have a sum and difference of two like terms, so we don't have to FOIL, so to speak. We can just F and L. Had these both been x's, then my answer would have been x squared. But instead, we don't have just x's, we have x minus 5 squared. And then we can multiply the two last terms together, and we'll have minus 4i squared. So to continue to simplify, we're just going to FOIL or box, change that to plus 4, collect it all, and then jump back into our steps that we need to do to find all the zeros. So this was a little more intense just because of this situation. Alright, on to the algebra. So x minus 5 squared, remember, that's x minus 5 times x minus 5. That gives x squared minus 5x minus another 5x plus 25. Collecting, x squared minus 10x plus 25 is a result of squaring this binomial, and then I squared goes to negative 1, make the adjustment, plus 4. Clean it up, x squared minus 10x plus 29. Remember, the objective is to find all the zeros, and what we did next was we did long division. We're going to divide this quadratic into that cubic, and we're going to get a linear factor. What do you multiply x squared by to get x cubed? That would have to be x. Go back and distribute the x with all three terms, lining up the product in the appropriate place. So x times x squared is x cubed. X times 10x is 10x squared. It belongs here. X times 29 is plus 29x. Subtract all the terms. Cancel. Collect. We're going to get negative 17x squared. Wait a minute. Okay, no. I changed this to, why did I do that? To plus. It should be minus here originally, so that means it's going to change to a plus. That's gone. Sorry about that. There we go. Now collecting, we're going to end up with positive 3x squared. So let me get rid of that. We're going to end up with positive 3x squared. Oh no. Here we go. There we go. Collecting down would be minus 30x, and let's bring down that 87. What do you multiply x squared by to get 3x squared? You multiply by 3, distribute the 3. There we go. Minus 30x, and then plus 87. There, when we subtract, we'll get a remainder of 0. There we go. So x plus 3 set equal to 0 results in a 0 of negative 3. So let's record all our zeros. One real and two imaginary for the cubic. What was it? 5 plus 2i and 5 minus 2i. There we go. So we have the set of steps recorded over here, so when we look back at it, we can remind ourselves what we did.